Hello, my name is Drea, and I'm a visual artist who paints from my home studio in Kitchener, Ontario. My foray into art has been a pretty recent one, but I think the creative urge has always been there. I just unfortunately shelved it in lieu of other pursuits. But certainly growing up, art was an influence. My dad was an artist, and so I think I always dabbled, but I never really thought of myself as an artist or someone that would go into that field. Growing up, my home life was rather unhappy, and this certainly produced a mistrust in me of others. And so I think I've always preferred to be an observer rather than actually participate with others. And I think this certainly comes through my art. I think, this fascination uh, by people and specifically by their faces and what their faces tell me about what's really going on inside their mind. I think this essentially sums up what I'm trying to do with my art. And I don't mean just micro expressions. There's certainly telltale signs in those, but I think it's also within the eyes, body language, just the facial expressions overall can reveal a lot about the inner narrative, and I think this is essentially what I'm trying to capture on the page every time I sit down in my studio. So I guess it was not too shocking that, I'd be drawn to creating faces. Not so much, I don't say portraits because my art is not figurative based. I'd say I paint people. I think that's a better representation of what I'm doing as an artist these days. Um, and in terms of my art journey, it's only been about 2 years. And I actually came to art in a more real, serious manner as a result of a head injury I had sustained back in 2016. And my most recent neurologist had suggested that I take up a new skill set as a means of building new neural pathways. So my strength had never been in drawing, and so I decided to try my hand at that. Um, but I'm about 7 years in now, in terms of the injury, and my brain, it's never returned to its former state. So I live with daily symptoms as a result, and this definitely impacts how and when I make my art. One example would be the drawing aspect of my work. I have to do this very quickly, which is unfortunate. As an artist, I had really wanted to grow that skill set, get better with my drawing. And certainly I think I have, just because I do it every day, but the progress has been incremental. But it's as a result, of the symptoms that I live with. My eyes can't focus on anything really for more than a few minutes without my vision blurring. So, in terms of the process of my art, when I sit down in the studio, I really only devote a few minutes to the drawing, and then the rest is painting, applying the paint. So that's, I think, between just my home life and the injury, certainly I do see the world differently now, and the way I see the world certainly impacts how I create my art. Um, so in terms of who my biggest influences have been, I have to say, I think Egon Schiele has always been the artist that I've admired the most, his work. I've always been drawn to it since I was young, and even to this day, I just absolutely love, looking at his portraits, his landscapes. We have a few of his prints up in our home. Um, but in more recent years, especially since starting to paint people, I've really found myself drawn to artists such as Alice Neal, Charlotte Salomon, and Tina Burning. I would say those three female artists have really influenced me, especially in terms of what I'm doing in my own studio. As for what I'm focusing on right now, I have a solo show coming up in May, and I have to produce 25 new pieces for it. So I've been very busy, um, and I find, you know, I'm I don't know if this is because I'm a new artist. I don't know if this ever goes away, but I find like I'll produce something and, you know, I'll like it maybe for an hour and then I'm just like, oh no. And so I've essentially been like, I know to have 25 pieces that I'm happy with to actually submit to the solo show, I'm probably going to have to produce double that amount. So I have a few weeks left. And so, yes, my focus definitely is on this upcoming show at the moment. Um, and what is the biggest challenge of being an artist? I'd have to say for myself, I think I find it incredibly difficult to put myself out there and to do the necessary PR work to build and broaden an audience for my work. But that's essentially what needs to happen, and I know this. So, you know, every day it's like I'm mentally preparing myself for having to essentially hustle in a way that I do not find to be my natural state in life. And it is kind of funny because prior to uh, the injury, I used to work as a literary agent, which is all hustle. So I don't know, but I find like it's easier to hustle for other people than myself. But I certainly know that if I want to get my art out there, if I want to gain more exposure, which I do, obviously, then this is part and parcel of it. And so, yes, working towards that. Um, in terms of advice that I would give to my younger self, I suppose I would have told younger Drea that, you know, to respond to that creative urge, that uprising within myself, to not, you know, ignore it, shelve it, restrain it, and, you know, just give it some time, give it some focus. I would have been curious to see what I would have been producing now at this state of my life if I had been producing, you know, my entire life. But yeah, I mean, that's, you know, in the past and we're here now. But certainly, yes, I think, you know, it's a quote by Mary Oliver, but essentially ignoring that creative urge within ourselves, it's a shame. And I would say to anyone, you know, answer it because it's there for a reason. Um, in terms of any unconventional mediums or techniques, no. I'd say I haven't really tried anything like that. It's early days, so, you know, at some point I imagine I will, but I think I've just been so focused on just trying to improve my drawing skills and to just essentially get into a groove that fits, you know, my skill set and feels good. I don't know if I'm there yet. I don't think I am. I think I'm still very much just experimenting and trying to figure out what I can do with gouache on paper. And, you know, I'm not trained. I didn't go to art school. I've never taken an art class. So I'm just sort of going along and trying to learn these things on my own. So, but definitely, I think once I'm more comfortable, I will want to sort of break down some of these barriers I've set up for myself as an artist and try new things. Ah, do I listen to music in the studio? Yes, yes, I do. Um, for the first plus year, I wasn't really able to listen to music. It hurt my head too much. And in the last 6 plus months, I've been able to listen to music again. Not to the extent that I used to be, but I can certainly listen to almost like a full album now, which is amazing. And so, yes, I listen to music every chance I get. And I find, making art, it's meditative for me, but I don't need the silence to still capture that. Like, I can have music in the background. And certainly, I think it just sets the mood for me in my studio. So I can't imagine now not listening to music, to be honest. Um, in terms of the best reaction someone has had to my work, I think I'm just like, and maybe this is still from just being somewhat new to this, but I am just over the moon that there are people who connect with my work and love my work enough to want to have it on their walls. I think that's been the best feeling for me. Just, you know, producing something and then putting it out into the world and someone sees it and just yeah uh, responds to it, connects with it, and loves it. And um, you know, I think because I paint people, I often get comments from collectors that they connected to the piece because it reminded them of themselves or reminded them of someone in their lives. And I think that certainly is something that happens with portraits. Like, we can't help but see ourselves in them or see our loved ones in them. And I think that's just amazing because, I create the people like mostly just from my own imagination. There are times when, the person that I'm painting is based on an image I've seen or someone I've passed in the street. But just to have that, like to still have someone connect with it and be like, that reminds me of my mother, it's brilliant. And I think in terms of other comments, I often get that people say that they don't see other people doing the work that I'm doing, the style of work that I'm doing. And I have to say that appeals to the part of myself that has always been rather roguish. So that's always lovely to hear. Um, and I think in terms of what I hope people take away from my art is essentially what I've said in the last answer. But I hope, I think all anyone can hope for is that, that their work garners some kind of response in people, some kind of reaction, whether it's good or bad. The fact is that if they're having any kind of reaction seeing your work, it means they are connecting with it. And I think that's ultimately what I'm after. And so, yes, in terms of upcoming events, there's the solo show in May, which is taking place in Kitchener. And yeah, please, if you want to check out my work, I'm on Instagram and my social handle is Drea C 2021. And so, yeah, please do. And thank you so much.